Greetings, my people. It is so good to be with you virtually in this moment. It is February 5th, 2025, and today we are going to talk about how the most dangerous thing we can be is united. We want to talk about the legacy of the late and great Dr. Martin Luther King. It is February, the month of my birth, so I always love February. And of course, we had Martin Luther King Day and Inauguration Day on the same day. And a lot of people felt a lot of cognitive dissonance, right? Martin Luther King Day, Donald Trump Day, Martin Luther King is president. No, it is a very confusing thing for a lot of people around the world. But we want to talk about the struggle and the battle of over the legacy of Martin Luther King that has been happening in our society here in the United States and around the world over the last few years. On the one hand, people are complaining that the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, which was so radical that they had to assassinate the man, right? You know, you're really doing something serious when someone feels like the best thing that they can do, the safest thing they can do is take you out. And that is what happened to the late and great Dr. Martin Luther King. Don't let anyone try to convince you that it was a lone gunman, because we can actually go and see that his family sued the United States government. They sued the United States government and they won that lawsuit. All right. They won that lawsuit for $1 that they sued, and the United States government, among others, were found complicit in the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. You can see it on the United States government website. Dr. Martin Luther King was not the modern woke concept of a revolutionary, right? It was not BIPOC unity, right? And then the whites are over there, right? It was very interesting to see, of course, in Kamala Harris's campaign. She listed all of the people she was for, and it made up about 74% of American civil, society. Women, people of color, black people, Asian people, immigrants, migrants, but not white men, right? There's a group of people who it is not for. And that is not Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. It was not about uniting people of color against the whites or something like that. It was the color that Martin Luther King was focused on at the end of his life, the time when they deemed him too dangerous to live, was the color green. All right? The color green. The most dangerous thing we can be is united, right? And this is something that I feel is very important to talk about, because right now we are seeing the end of the era of DEI, right? With the killing of the murder on TV of our brother George Floyd, right? A human being who was choked on television, right? There was a huge resurgence of racial consciousness and DEI, right? I was someone who was doing DEI before that happened. I didn't even like calling it DEI because I always felt like that term was a little bit weird, but you know what? Gotta pay bills. So I was doing work in DEI, but more and more and gradually, me and many people of my peers in the field were starting. This is not all I did, let me just tell you. It was like a side gig, but it's still something I was involved in at a pretty high level with some of the biggest companies in our world, actually. And a lot of people were starting to feel like, okay, this is getting weird. Is this still a training, or are we actually trying to do political mobilization or trying to push a particular political agenda inside of the business in the disguise of something, right? And I want to talk about this because it's very, very important, because one of the things that the machinations of the elite are doing is trying to divide and conquer, okay? Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about uniting working class whites with working class black people, right? What he was not talking about is what we see right now, Ivy League schools like Harvard, right? And all of these, and look, I'm not going to say I haven't benefited from affirmative action, but let's just look at the results. Almost all the black people in Ivy League schools have two parents that make six figures or more, and they have master's degrees, right? So who is actually benefiting? Is it black people in general? Or is it just the elite cream of the cream? Because actually, when we look at all the federal funding that was going to DEI, the number one people that were benefiting were white women and all these other groups. And number 8 were black folk. So who is really to benefit, and what is really going on, right? Is it about changing the name of a bridge? Is it about lowering the bar so that people of color can get in, and thus basically saying that we are of a lower standard, reinforcing that narrative? Or do we want to go and close down the prison, school to prison pipeline? Do we want to go in and make sure that our children are actually at reading level and doing math at the grade level that they're in? Do we want to address the flaws in our education system and actually bring our people up and out of not just a state of poverty, but a state of not being equipped to actually bring their greatest gifts into this world? right? And so that is, again, when we're talking about co-opting movements, just like Dr. Martin Luther King's vision, you feel like his legacy has been co-opted by a group. It's true. And it also is getting co-opted on this other side, because guess what? The revolution is not on the left and it's not on the right. It's not blue and it's not red. It's not on a ballot, my friends, right? If we are going to change the world, right, it can't be this group that are saying, yes, yes, we are for you and we are with you and all of this. And clearly a lot of people of color, Latinos, Arabs, Muslims do not buy it, right? But saying we're for you and we're for people of color, but we're going to be bombing the obliteration out of them all over the world, to be promoting all of these wars. And I'm not just talking about our brothers and sisters in Palestine and the genocide that we've had on TV from Biden and Kamala, just like without any hesitation, right? But I'm also talking about, the way that all kind, like even when we talk about immigration, affirmative action is just one of the many topics. But at the end of the day, if you look at what was happening during the Occupy movement, all right, we're talking about 2011, 2012. It was the 99%. We are the 99%. That's about as inclusive as if you're talking about inclusion, that's about as inclusive as it gets. If there's going to be an us and a them, it's not going to be the people of color versus the non-people of color. It's really going to be the people who run the world and use us, and the people who are at all kinds of levels of every color, the victims of exploitation by corporate elites, by old money elites. You don't even know their name. You think it's Elon Musk, you think it's Donald Trump, you think those are the billionaires, you think Jeff Bezos are the really ones pulling the strings out here. Come on, y'all. If the people were real money, you don't even know their name. Real money moves in silence. Real money moves in silence. Who owns the banks? Who owns the banks? Who owns the gold mines and the means of industry, right? There are old money, old white men, right, that are on a whole nother level than these guys. The Occupy movement was a big threat. And actually, if you look at the news media and the way that they were reporting, there was a spike in all the most divisive race baiting and gender baiting and really trying to create this division right after that. I think people were terrified. I think that the elites were terrified by the Occupy movement because we were going right for the jugular. The financial system, we were talking about, we are all united, working class, middle class, upper middle class, all of us compared to them, right, have nothing. There are people who own the weapons companies. They own the companies that make the guns that the government uses to control. They print the money. They own there's a couple of banks that have the shares in the Federal Reserve, which is not federal in that it's not controlled by the federal government. And it's not a reserve. They don't hold any money. It's not a bank because there's no banking happening. The Federal Reserve Bank is just who prints the money. So all this to say, are we really about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King? Are we really trying to be of that lineage? The lineage that was so dangerous that it was safer for the elites to kill than to let live? If so, it's got to be inclusive. It's got to be diverse. It's got to talk about real equity. And I don't think it's real equity that the elite of the elite, rich of the rich, right? Some of these, like myself, right, were coming, both of my parents had master's degree and we immigrated here to America, right? Is reparations for me? No. My family didn't go through the transatlantic slave trade. I'm black. I experienced anti-black racism, yes, but it's more nuanced than that. It's not about getting the already rich blacks and the families of immigrant Africans into, because look, let's keep it real too. A lot of it is first, second, and third generation Africans that are getting into the affirmative action ends up benefiting. And look, I'm not saying it's not good. We don't want to benefit those people, but we got to be able to go deeper and we got to be willing to talk about the color green. We have to also, it's intersectional. It's actually intersectional though. That's the thing. People say intersectionality, but they just all lip service. I remember a time where we were leading a workshop, a DEI workshop, and everyone was going around and talking about their privilege, and there was only one white person in the entire room, and it was a white woman. Okay, and all these people of color, and we're like, oh, I've been through this and that. Real stuff, real stuff. I don't want to play it down. And by the time it gets to this white woman, we're all like, all right, here we go. White lady gonna talk about her struggle. And this girl bursts into tears and talks about that she was an orphan and the abuse that she experienced in the foster. And it was very humbling, very humbling. She has no family. She doesn't know anyone. She has no one in this world except for her friend. Now, who's affirmative action for then? $500,000 a year income black folks? who immigrated from the elite class that were siding with the colonizers in whatever African nation, right? I have friends who their parents are the ones who are oppressing my people in Sudan. Their parents are buddy with the dictators. Buddy, they're the ones who sell the guns and do the deals with the evil people. And they're getting affirmative action. They're millionaires getting affirmative action. Millionaires off the backs of black people. So, let us reclaim the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. But for real. Blessings.